Thank you for visiting ChristopherMedia.net. ChristopherMedia.net.
From Asthmacore Studios near Detroit, Michigan, it's Unregimented.
Gangsters, what's up, guys?
And now, here are your hosts.
Welcome to Unregimented number 292. I'm Chris.
I'm Aaron.
And I'm Rich.
Oh boy, if you like conspiracy theories, your day has come.
Or if you just
on the Epstein.
Yes.
If you just like wild and reckless, irresponsible speculation, this is going to be the podcast for you, because I don't even know what's fact and what's fiction at this point, because shit's coming out at a ridiculous clip.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here, certainly. But let's start with the most pressing question. Have we decided who Epstein liked more, Trump or Clinton? Who is he really besties with?
The flight logs say Clinton.
Pretty much, yeah.
The flight logs say Clinton. The photos say Trump.
Well,
but, I think
Bill Gates
honestly,
visited the island without his wife.
He did what?
He visited the island without his wife, and if you've ever listened to NPR, you know that the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and Bill and Melinda Gates are always mentioned in the same breath.
Not when it's bad news. No Melinda in this story.
Yeah, but yeah, she wasn't listed on the flight log. So if old Billy Boy is taking visits to Pedophile Island without her, hope he's got some good divorce lawyers on retainer.
It doesn't help too that the jet's called Lolita 1, or that was the nickname for it.
Oh, I was going to say, please tell me that's not what it's registered as.
No, it wasn't registered at nobody. The people who worked at the airport called it that.
Yes,
because they knew what was going on. So yeah, it's not like Epstein nicknamed it that.
Jesus Christ! Good times.
I mean, would you want to ride on a jet that somebody nicknamed that? I wouldn't want to be caught dead on the manifest. No, nickname or not, especially with all the stuff that's going around.
If I go to get on a plane and I see propellers, I think Buddy Holly Express, and I say, no, thank you, I'll wait for the next one. I'm not getting on something named the Lolita Express. No. I'm all right on that. But see, that's where it's like, when they're like, well, Trump isn't on the flight logs as much. Yeah, because Trump took his own private jet to this fucking island. He didn't need to fly fucking Epstein's jet. I mean, there is video and pictures of them hanging out, but not past mid to late 90s? Is it pretty much the last video or pictures of Trump and him?
It's that or early 2000s.
I couldn't tell you the date on it, but yeah, judging by Trump's appearance, it has to be that.
Well, the most infamous video, or not infamous, but the most seen video as far as I've seen of Trump and him is everybody has put that sometime in 1992. And that's the one where Trump's biting his lower lip, doing a little white boy dancing, like he's drunk and sweating.
He is so coked up. He totally is. Because I believe him that he doesn't drink, but there's no way he wasn't doing coke in that video.
I mean, you're going to hang around with models and tell us you don't do coke? Come on now.
Well, either way, I mean, it's just... I was amazed that this apparent suicide, for at least a few hours, it brought people of all different political beliefs together to go, oh, horse shit.
Yeah, I love the meme that you posted, Rich, with Justin Timberlake. He was just giving a look, what did it say? Every news outlet is reporting Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide, and every American is just and it's got Timberlake just doing that look. Come on now.
And yeah, of all the people, everybody that liked it was from all over the political spectrum. I wish I could have screenshotted it, but I was at work. Someone posted, is this the thing that's finally going to bridge the gap between the left and the right in America? And I wanted to screenshot that so bad and just send it to you guys and be like, that's wishful thinking. Give us about 5-6 hours.
Wait, this is you have two parties arguing and somebody throws a gun in the middle of the room and they start fighting over it, and you're like, oh, look, now they have a common interest. they both want the gun. Well, once somebody gets that gun and points it at the other one, then their interests are going to separate quite quickly.
Oh, well, that's what I'm saying.
It's not. This isn't something that's bringing anyone together. They're both sides are looking to point that weapon, the weapon of this whole conspiracy of Epstein's death and his supposed history with Trump and Clinton. They're looking to point that weapon at the other side and go, see, you guys are the evil child molesters.
See, now I had a thought like Rich, but it was more like, is this a rare display of bipartisanship to take out somebody? Did Donnie call Bill and go, hey, we got a problem?
Right. I would be more. Yeah. It would be easier to believe that there was a conspiracy to take him out that bridged some gaps.
Because this happened the day after they that document dump. That's another thing that makes me go, with the timing of it.
Well, yeah. Aside from anything that we've heard about the circumstances, all you had to hear was that he died in jail. And you're like, that doesn't sound right, just based on the timeline alone.
And now there's things coming out that were like, guards were falsifying records. One of the guards wasn't actually supposed to be working as a guard.
The power went out for 3 hours around the time of his suicide, so there's no video of anything.
Hold on, let's not pave over all this. So what is the deal with the guards? There is like some sort of shift change, or was somebody, you said, not supposed to be a guard, meaning that they had another job?
Yeah, well, the first thing is there were people just falsifying records that they were keeping an eye on them.
Right, okay, so they were logging in at a station that they weren't actually attending.
Yes.
Well, first of all, he was in what's called the secure housing unit.
Right.
AKA the SHU. When you're in the SHU, you're supposed to be checked on at least every 30 to 45 minutes. That's without any type of, you've shown a tendency towards self-harm. That's just, you check on them every 30 to 45 minutes. You know.
Right. He was not on suicide watch. He was removed from suicide watch.
Which is insane, because if you have a therapist and you say to your therapist, I'm feeling suicidal, she or he can go to a judge and have you committed for a 72-hour observation at a minimum. An attempt, I mean, they're not going to take you off unless there's someone asking specifically to be taken off. And this is one of those things, like, I don't know if it's been confirmed or not, but apparently his own lawyers asked for him to be taken off suicide watch.
Right.
Which is really strange, because that really doesn't help him in their case that, he's so distraught. Because look at how much R. Kelly's lawyers are playing up how distraught he is. That's part of their defense, So, I mean,
and it also doesn't jive with the first explanation that I heard, which was that this was basically that he wasn't taken off a suicide watch. It was just a processing thing, right? He was being moved from one facility to another. And so I guess that, he would be on suicide watch at this facility and the other one, but in that interim processing in the cell, apparently you're just not on suicide watch at that point.
ABC News says he was taken off of suicide watch July 29th. He was no longer being a threat to himself.
Interesting.
Which he had just tried to kill himself 6 days earlier. How's that work? Oh, you're all good now.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, even if, like, in the youth homes I was in, if you were a run risk, that's what we called it. I don't know what the staff actually called it. Meaning, you were at risk of running, or if you were at risk of, you had made suicidal gestures or comments, or God forbid had attempted it, you were pretty much damn near one-on-one for, like, at minimum a week. And I mean, they took everything. Like, you had a mattress, you had no shoelaces, you had no belt. I mean, there was no sheets on that mattress. There was a prison pillow that's thin as fuck. No pillowcase. I mean, they kept an eye on you. So, I mean, I'm talking about, youth and state homes for kids. We're not, there were some kids who committed crimes in there, but for the most part, they were just, unwanted kids versus someone who's being accused of a crime. So maybe their standards are a lot more lax for whatever reason, because they just think, well, fuck it, they're criminals. Who cares if they kill themselves? Which is kind of weird considering what we were saying last episode. Right. You remember we were sitting here like, well, if he takes himself out, who cares, And he took himself out. So
we have Epstein being removed from suicide watch after 6 days. We have him placed in a cell where guards are having some kind of hinky shift changes or something going on, not logging in correctly. I know that Mark Garagos on his show, him and Adam Carolla's show, was talking about how there is the camera that was actually pointed at Epstein's cell was malfunctioning at that point. So
was that what it was? Because it was, the report I heard was it was a power outage that affected the cameras for 3 hours.
I think that's the same thing.
Okay,
the camera's not functioning. I mean, you heard a reason for it, but the result is the same, right?
No, yeah. I'm just
okay. Well, all I'm trying to do is lay this out, because the thing about all this information, again, I don't know if any of these things are true or not, but these different sources are reporting all of these things. And what's interesting about it is that they are not competing theories, that these are actually a sequence of events that would need to happen to put Epstein in a situation where he could be taken out and made to look like suicide. You'd have to have all those elements in place. You take one of those things out, and we might have proof that it didn't go down that way, or it might not ever happen, right? If the lawyers don't take him off a suicide watch, then he can't be put in a position where he's not being constantly monitored, and they can be more lax with the security around him.
The lawyers didn't take him off suicide watch. The prison did.
No, I said the lawyers requested. That's all they can do. They can't tell him to do shit.
Yeah.
I mean, but that's one of those reports. I'm like, is that a real report? Is this speculation? I mean, here's what makes me irritated about this whole situation. If one of us were suspected of committing a crime by the police, they would want to get us in custody and talking as soon as possible to lock us into a story. They wouldn't accept this. Well, I'm not, unless we said lawyer from the get-go. The minute they had us in custody, just like lawyer, and that's the only thing we said, then there's nothing they can do. But what irritates me is that, like, everybody involved in situations like, we're investigating it, we will tell you what we find. But no. Why do you guys get together for a couple of weeks and get your story straight and then release this shit? Why aren't you locking in people's stories immediately? This is because this is not just Joe Blow who woke up in a drunk tank after beating his wife with a massive head full of, guilt and a hangover and took himself out. This is a guy
Rich, that's a huge assumption to make, that there isn't an investigation and that's being handled properly. All we're getting is leaked information, basically. That's all it's getting to the press. You can't judge on how an investigation into this death is going by that information alone.
What I'm saying is yeah, I guess. I don't know. You're right. Why am I shocked that they're not putting out there what they're doing? Why would it be?
Well, I think, but you're kind of blending two things: the press and those responsible for investigating this.
Well, I also keep forgetting that that he isn't an average person in custody. This isn't just a normal situation. There's a lot of moving parts here. He had federal interest. Who knows who he had talked to? We don't even know if he'd ever talked about a deal. We don't know if he said, I'm not saying shit. So, I mean, there could be a lot of moving parts behind the scenes that we just don't know about. So, yeah, I guess. Like I said, I know that if in my experience, if they think we got to get to the truth, they want to lock people in immediately and get to shit immediately, get you on record That way they can come back to you later and say, okay, so you said this, and you go, yes. Well, actually you didn't, because here in your deposition you said this. So which one is it? I mean, that's fucking with people 101 to get them to fucking get what you want out of them.
Well, there's also the idea that you have to, if you don't have an investigation, then you don't have a reason to question anybody. And as long as his death certificate says suicide, then you don't really have an investigation, do you?
Well, the investigation becomes it's not a suicide. They're not investigating his suicide. They're investigating how
they're
he's able
culpable in allowing him to kill himself, right?
Yeah, which is rather convenient as well. But I mean, and I know this is paranoid
I think
on my
the circumstances are rather different, though, because one probably looks more like you're coming in and sitting down with somebody from HR and giving a statement, and the other one is a police officer's come around to interrogate you. Right? I don't know what's happening, if there's an official investigation into this death being looked at as possibly not suicide, or if they're only investigating this as a suicide. But yeah, I mean, the only way to get the information the way that you're putting it out, that you're saying that it should be, and I agree with you, it would have to, I think at that point, be ruled a murder case in order to instigate that type of investigation. As far as I can tell, it hasn't been, and therefore that ship has sailed as far as getting those stories on record and locking people's stories in. They already went to the bar and got their story straight.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm agreeing with you in the process that should be taken, but there's another process before that of just ruling on the death. I mean, that might change because the latest reporting is that in the autopsy of Epstein, it turns out he managed to, if he did kill himself, use enough force to break a bone in his neck.
Well, first thing I thought about that was, don't you snap your neck when you hang yourself?
Well, you got to remember, it's not the hanging.
Really,
it's not the hanging that snaps your neck. It's the drop and the sudden stop that snaps your neck.
There's different. So one person hanging themselves can put themselves in a situation where they can choke themselves out, and then once they're out, they can't. A person, if they have enough will, can choke themselves out. But then you'll pass out and naturally start breathing again. If you put something around your neck that chokes you out, then you die because there's no option for you to just pass out and start breathing again. So that's how one who, especially in a situation like a jail, like what was it? Probably something I saw on The Wire or something where the guy hangs himself in his jail cell off a doorknob.
Well, that's what they said happened. He was actually strangled from behind.
He was, but that was the way that they had made it look like wasn't implausible. Like, people can do that. Because again, all you have to do is put enough pressure on your neck, and then, once you're passed out, you're slumped over, and that pressure isn't going to be relieved, and then you're just going to die if somebody doesn't find you.
That's how a lot of people die.
So actually,
autoerotic asphyxiation too.
Right. So now, actually being hung properly and to where your neck snaps and the death as fast as a hanging can be, that is a different process, and that takes another party involved of actually putting you high enough, giving you just the right enough slack, and dropping you fast enough. And one person can't do that even if they have a chandelier and a chair to kick out from underneath them.
Here's what the autopsy said. This is according to Washington Post. There was autopsy report suggests unusual broken neck bones, plural, not singular. Mm-hmm. The Post writes, such breaks can occur in those who hang themselves, particularly if they are older, according to forensics experts and studies on the subject. But they are more common in victims of homicide by strangulation, the experts said.
But I said it'll happen in one of every 4 hangings and one of every 3 strangulations.
Well, that's what they go on to say. They go on to point out that
those statistics aren't that far apart. It's only 8%.
It said no single factor in an autopsy can provide a conclusive answer about what happened. So, and all of this is being leaked from the New York Chief Medical Examiner's office. The Post has two sources that are reporting to him because no official autopsy results have been released yet.
Well, right. Like everything else that we've been talking about, it's not concrete proof of anything. It's one more thing that all adds up to doesn't seem right.
Well, I've already kind of, how do you put this, resigned myself, I guess, to the fact that we'll probably never know exactly what the fuck happened. It's going to be one of those, this is going to be one of those things that if you're prone to not believe what the government and authorities tell you, you're going to think something else happened. And if you're prone to believe, and take at face value what people in authority and the government tells you, you're going to go, well, he committed suicide. And that's going to be pretty much where a lot of people are going to come down on, what sides are going to come down on. I mean, there's a lot of, let's put it this way. There's a lot of coincidences that happened in a very short period of time to allow for him to kill himself if that's what happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how anyone can look at him and go, I'm not saying that there's a conspiracy, but that's winning the lottery odds that all this shit would happen in such a short period of time. So this perfect storm's created. So he dies during this even if it's more than 3, like I'll give it, let's extend it to 5-hour window. The guards weren't doing their job. The cameras were down. He had been asked to be taken off or his lawyers had requested to be taken off suicide watch. The Department of Corrections acquiesced to his lawyer's request. I mean, these, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. That's just what we know has been, reported from multiple sources. And because there's a source that says that that it was recorded in a log that they heard wailing, like
oh yeah, that was another one. Yeah,
like borderline screaming coming from his cell shortly before he was found hanged. And it's like, okay, so was he really crying because he had made his decision and he was like, well, fuck it, or was he in the middle of coming to the conclusion this is the only way out for me? And, then he accepted it, he calmed down and then went about his business, or was he begging somebody not to do something? Who knows? So
I've seen a lot of suicides on TV and movies, and I've never seen anyone scream before they did it.
Yeah. I mean, maybe if you jump off like the Empire State Building, you'll scream on your way down.
Right.
I mean, I saw the 9/11 footage,
but
those people were jumping from pretty high, and they were pretty silent on the way down. So, I mean, that's...
Well, you wouldn't have heard them if they didn't.
You heard when they landed. I remember that footage because that shit stuck with me, and I was like, never want to see or hear that footage again. I was good on that. That was... Ugh.
Well, you're probably right that we're never going to know what actually happened here, because you would think that there has to be some loose link in this chain, right? There was some party that was paid what would probably end up looking like a ridiculously small amount of money to do something illegal. Maybe didn't even know at the time what they were doing or why. And that person would eventually squeal. But I don't know if those people ever really come forward, especially on high profile cases like this.
Well, and I think something
used to be, but hold on, because we've seen a lot of news stories in the past where somebody came forward. They were somebody that was paid to do some sort of crime, steal something, was selling drugs to somebody famous, right? And that was a big change from the old days in Hollywood where nobody would talk. All kinds of crazy shit went down behind the scenes. And all these reporters that actually had access to these stars said nothing to that, about that to the public, out of whether it was respect or fear, or just wanting to keep their jobs or whatever. That was the status quo, right? And now... when we come to the age of the 24-hour news cycle, and it seems like they're just interviewing everyone having to do with any kind of high-profile thing. But Most of those people are fucking paid. Most of those people who come out and are talking about, they were involved with somebody famous that was involved in some crime. It's bullshit. It's total bullshit. And I think we've gotten wise to that scam, so they don't do that anymore. So now we're just back to, well, nobody, that person is never really going to come forward. Whoever these parties were involved that were probably paid tens of thousands of dollars to falsify records, to shut off a camera, to do something, those people are happy with their money. They don't need their life turned upside down. They have no reason to come forward other than their own conscience. And if nobody's asking you directly about it anymore, then probably be pretty easy to forget it that you were even involved in any of this shit.
You are bringing up a point that I think we've lost sight of in the last few days. I mean, the first few days. What was it? Trump body count, Clinton body count, blah blah blah. We're forgetting this guy was a billionaire. He was connected, and he was good at not getting caught. How do we know he didn't facilitate this whole thing?
Sorry, that Epstein facilitated his.
Well, like you're saying, he could have just spread a bunch of money around. Hey, I'll make sure X amount of money gets deposited in your bank accounts if you guys go away for 3 hours. That kind of, like you said, he's connected, he's rich, and he's good at not getting caught.
Well, okay, I see where you're going. I mean, what if he was in a situation where he knew that there were a lot of people after him, and he was
this was the day after that document.
He didn't want to spend the rest of his life in jail, and he certainly didn't want to spend it with having to, check over his shoulder constantly. So maybe he just decided to do it and convince his lawyers to go along with it, to, convince them that he's not a threat to himself. Yeah.
I've absolutely thought of that because, I mean, that's not as far-fetched as a lot of people would want everyone to think. Because if he's staring life in prison and everything that comes with it for what he is looking at life in prison for, or flipping and living a life, like you said, of never being safe and secure after having the money and living the life he's did where he's always felt secure.
Right. Or I guess you do have another option of going into witness protection, but, I think for an average citizen, that might be a feasible plan. But for somebody who's had their own private fuck island and jets to fly to it, like, they ain't gonna make it on $70,000 a year.
Well, you don't
he's
even have
he's gonna off himself in that first year, or get involved in some hinky shit, or out himself anyway.
And do you want to be?
It's not a realistic lifestyle for him.
Also, do you want two guys who have the resources of the United States government constantly looking for you? I wouldn't.
Well, you don't even have to look further than the mafia guys who have flipped and went in the witness protection program. And I mean, we like to think, or we don't like to think, but we're told in this country that the mafia is like, the high up guys are worth like, $500 million. They're not worth anywhere near that. And they can't adjust to the lifestyle in the witness protection program.
Unregimented.
ChristopherMedia.net. ChristopherMedia.net.
Unregimented.
I feel like we need to set some parameters, though, for this conversation. I know that we went from Trump and Clinton and their possible involvement with Epstein, and then on to his death and all these weird circumstances. But any parties that I'm referring to are just unknown parties, and I don't feel, I have no proof certainly, but I don't feel like any of these parties will ever be found out to be directly connected with either party of Trump or Clinton. This is just a guy who did a lot of insane shit with a lot of people with a lot of money, and there are, nobody named Clinton or Trump was on those documents, at least so far as we know. But a lot of people with money and influence were. So I just wanted to be clear. I'm not directly pointing fingers at a Clinton or Trump. I'm just saying there's plenty of people with plenty of reasons to take this guy out, including Epstein himself.
Yep. And hey, the FBI raided his island 2 days ago. Slow down.
Yeah, that's another weird thing. I don't understand if you are taking him into custody for as broad of a range of crimes as they were, why they didn't execute search warrants the minute they had him on custody on every single property they could get a search warrant on at that moment.
And it was in the Virgin Islands. It's not like you had to get a foreign government involved.
Unless he was, I don't know. Who the fuck knows, man? Money buys you a lot of fucking bullshit. It buys you a lot of ways to clog up the gears, man. I mean, that's the thing. That's what I keep trying to tell people. People are like, they think like, oh, someone gets arrested and they go to trial in a couple fucking months and then boom, within a year, they're either, acquitted or they're in prison. I'm like, yeah, if you're poor, if you got money, you can have lawyers tie that shit up in court and while you're out on bail for fucking years. You don't.
Right. Well, they raided his island after he died, right? So if that is correct, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Can you do your vaping off, Mike?
Sorry.
It's like whistling right in the microphone. So if he didn't die, he and his lawyers probably could have fended off the FBI for even longer.
Yeah, but how? If they got you in custody for that, how? Okay, I know the answer. He's rich, but I mean, if you're in custody for something, how are you staving that off?
One thing that Garagos pointed out is once the person that's being accused is dead, then you have no party for standing to fight any of this, really.
But I mean, I guess if he's in custody, my question is, why couldn't they have raided his island if they got him in custody? If they got you in custody, that means they got something. Isn't that generally, if you're in custody, isn't that pretty much cause to get a warrant?
You have to have probable cause probable cause to arrest someone is usually you have to have even stronger probable cause for an arrest warrant than you do for a search warrant. So that's why I said that seems kind of backwards.
Yeah, that's what I don't understand here. They could take him into custody but not search his property? Isn't it supposed to go the other way first?
I mean, I can understand if they've been searching.
But consider this, though. You have direct accusations of crime, right? And then you have a lot of rumors of behavior. The crimes that he was being charged with come from individuals who were claiming that he raped them or abused them or trafficked them in some certain way. So you're looking at individuals with direct claims against one person. As far as I know, he wasn't being investigated for human trafficking.
Well, if they arrested him based on the testimony given under oath by his alleged victims, it seems like, okay, that's enough to arrest him. Then when they finally start investigating and digging through his personal property, personal information, if they find even more, they're just going to add more charges onto it. Who knows, who knows what could come out that, oh, well, they found this. If they've only been digging in it for 2 days, you got to imagine just the paperwork alone, they got to have at least a couple forensic accountants and shit working on stuff and investigators, tracing shit backwards, trying to figure out who knew what. I wouldn't be shocked if we don't hear about people getting charged for facilitating him in this situation, for letting him do shit. If there's not more arrests down the line.
Well, a lot of those people got immunity in his case from 2010. And for the record, he was arrested on sex trafficking charges on July 6th for sex trafficking of minors in Florida and New York.
If they got immunity for his case in 2010 and they still worked for him afterwards, and they can prove, or they believe they have proof that they committed crimes after that, that immunity does not extend to those crimes. At that point, those are new crimes they could charge them for. And what is the point of giving them a fucking deal to testify against him if he's dead? I mean, that's the really shitty part at this point. His alleged victims are never going to have their day in court to face him, ever. I mean, and people were like, well, they can sue his estate. Yeah, well, money's nice. But I guarantee you talk to people like, the Michigan State guy, Larry Nassar's victims, and they're going to say that, when they got to speak at his sentencing or when they got a chance to testify against him and face him and see that now he had no power over him, all that fear and shit that he had instilled in them by doing what he did was taken away. I bet you that's what they hold dearer than any financial reimbursement they get.
Yeah, money's great, and I'm sure it can solve some problems, and it is a form of punishment, so that's nice, for the person that has, or the party that has to pay out that money. But none of that is closure, and that's what people really need. I mean, Whether that closure comes from a process, comes from the person who victimized them, or whether it's just something that they have to provide for themselves. There has to be some kind of end to that story before a person can move on.
And that's why I have a hard time people that are like, yep, he killed himself. I'm glad. Fuck it. Whatever. It's over with. I'm like, that's a rather simplistic way of looking at it. I understand that you have no empathy or compassion for him whatsoever. Believe me, I get that. Mm-hmm. But there's more than just him involved in the situation.
Right. I mean, that if anything valuable comes out of this, maybe it's understanding how somebody can just basically pull this off in front of everyone, right?
Well, like I said, the list of people who are confirmed to at least have visited that island is mind-blowing. Stephen Hawking? Yeah.
Well, also,
like I said, Bill Gates?
The bigger list of people who never had any direct contact with him, never went to the island, but knew what the fuck was going on. Like all the people who worked at the airport who nicknamed his plane. Those people were putting two and two together.
Well, yeah, but I mean, like, they can put two and two together, but unless they see something with their own eyes, there's really not a whole lot they can testify to, except for, yes, this plane did leave at this time, it did arrive at this time. I mean, I'm talking about people that are confirmed to have been there. It's like, if people who work at the airport are coming to this conclusion that this dude's a kitty diddler, a short-eyed motherfucker, then you're telling me that Stephen Hawking and Bill Gates can't put two and two together?
Yeah. That is a good point, because you're complicit either way, right? Either you went there to participate or you were lying to yourself that none of that shit really went down.
Yeah, and I mean, I get the whole, because I have heard, because this is my favorite thing, people that, something happens and you say, well, what the fuck was Stephen Hawking and Bill Gates doing there? And then all of a sudden, the list of hypotheticals come out. Well, you don't know. And I'm like, okay, so we're going to play the what-if game? All right. And the one I keep hearing is, well, just because they're geniuses in their chosen field doesn't mean they have any common sense. Come on now. Bill Gates, Stephen Hawking, you're telling me they don't have internet access? They don't know how the world really is? They're not babes in the woods. Come on now. Like, I don't buy that they're just like these bumbling idiots who go through life, but, are geniuses when it comes to just a handful of things. Not everyone's an idiot savant is what I'm getting at. And that's like, that's like the defense of these people. And I'm like, first of all, what are you defending them for? Are you related to them? You think you're in Bill Gates' will? Hawking's dead. If you were going to get something, you would have already gotten it.
Stumbled upon this island.
Yeah.
They were just flying over in their own jet and said, it looks like a party's going on down there. Let's check it out.
It looks like a party. Land the jet. Yeah, no, I don't buy it. And especially Bill traveling without Melinda. If he saw a party without Melinda, he'd probably tell the jet to turn around and get away from it as quick as possible because he doesn't want to take a tongue lashing when he gets home. She piss test him for adrenaline when he got home. You been having fun without me, Bill? What's going on here? But yeah, forgive me, but I just have to say this. You know who is somewhere sitting laughing his ass off? Even if he's not validated in his mind, he thinks he's validated. Alex fucking Jones, because this has been his fucking the drum he has banged for the last couple of years about how there are the elite, the rich elite are fucking children, and it's everyone's keeping quiet about it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so I because he's been deplatformed on pretty much everything, and I don't seek out what he's saying because I just can't handle that much crazy in my life. If I wanted that much crazy in my life, I'd get married again. But I know he's got to be sitting there just gloating to his, whatever's left to his group of followers, and they're just eating this shit up with a big old smile. Because whether or not this is what he was talking about, I mean, broken clock right twice a day theory here is kind of close to what he was talking about. Let's be honest here, so.
Yeah, but someday the world is really going to end, and then all the guys, crazy guys in the corner are going to be like, see?
No,
you should have listened to me.
We have in the sports world, Aaron, we have these type of people who don't follow sports, but just in the most peripheral way possible. And all the local teams, every year they go, this is our year. And they could be wrong for 50 years. And on that 51st year, when they win the championship, they go, see, I told you. You say this every year. It doesn't fucking matter. You can't predict it every year.
If you didn't go into every new season thinking that, then why would you even follow that team?
I don't know. Ask Lions fans.
Does anybody say, you know what? I went into this season thinking that this team was total losers, but it turned out that they won the championship.
It's happened a few times, but it's very fucking rare. I mean, that is like 5-leaf clover rare. So yeah, I mean, but once again, that just proves that a long enough timeline. What is the saying? Give 10,000 monkeys on 10,000 typewriters, 10,000 years, they'll bang out the works of Shakespeare just by accident. I mean, it's just one of those things. But still, a guy like Alex Jones is going to try to take a victory lap in any chance he can. And I almost wish I had looked it up before the show to see if he's just like just ranting with his shirt off, like spraying his chest with water. And like glistening and like, I told you.
I'm imagining more like the shock was so much that he went all the way around to the other side, and he actually has a tie on. He's sipping some tea. He's politely addressing his audience, laying out the facts in a logical manner.
At that point,
that's the only way I can imagine Alex Jones snapping.
I was going to say,
otherwise, I don't know what snapping looks like.
I was about to say, yeah, if he did that, we'd be hearing reports. Alex Jones has snapped. He's become civilized.
Right.
Yeah, he does remind me of that one friend that I think everybody has.
It's either that or he just fucking executes himself on television, like, well, not that he's on television, but on his own show, like
Bud Dwyer style.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, by the way, Rich, Joe Rogan's going to bat for Alex Jones, saying he was right about this.
Here's without going too far down this rabbit hole, this is what I'll say about Alex Jones. It always irritated me about these accusations. It's easy to paint with such a broad brush by just going the elite, the rich. If you knew specifics, why weren't you naming names? It's kind of the same. Like Corey Haim does, Corey Haim's dead. Corey Feldman has been doing the same thing for the last couple of years. Oh, there's huge pedophile rings in Hollywood, and they're like, can you name anybody? Well, Corey Haim was molested. Okay, well, can you name anybody who's still breathing? Well, no. But I mean, there's huge pedophile rings in Hollywood, and it's like, I almost believe that, especially after the Me Too shit came out, and all this bullshit that we found out that Hollywood is surprise, surprise, as self-righteous and sanctimonious a bunch of cunts as they want to be during their award shows, are just as fucked up as everybody else, if not more. I could believe it, but you got to back it up with something more than just trust me. No, I'm not going to trust you. You need to give me some names, some dates.
Well, I guess Joe Rogan's saying that he was naming Epstein. He was talking about this island 3 years ago.
Sure, he was, but what's the point of pointing out that he was right about it unless you're using that to illustrate the fact that he might be right about other things, right? Does Joe Rogan believe that Alex Jones is right in general, and he's using this to illustrate another point where he's right that's actually proving out in the press?
The article's just talking about him talking about that, about this specific situation.
Well, I mean, I can tell you from watching many episodes of Joe Rogan's podcast interviews, Joe Rogan has said multiple times, oh, Alex Jones is part showman, part crazy man, and every once in a while he's so sane it's scary, but it's all mixed up in there. I mean, like, so unless he's changed his tune 180 based on this one thing, then
right. But then you might as well shake a magic 8-ball, because how do you even know what you're getting? That's what I'm saying. It doesn't.
You have to
make
trust
sense
Alex, brother.
It doesn't make sense to point to Alex Jones and go, see, he was actually a reliable source of information on this one, because you can't use that as a model to predict any future behavior or whether he's going to be correct about anything. It's the stop clock. It just happened to be right.
Well, that's what I said. And like I said, it's a world of difference between elite rich people in this country are there's a group of elite rich people in this country who are pedophiles. And yes, this is the names of the people. These are the people who are going to be on the flight manifest, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Which he, as far as I know, I never heard him do that. And as far as 3 years ago mentioning his pedophile island, when did fucking Epstein get busted the first time?
Yeah. 2010?
Slow down, Jones. There's a speed limit. Don't hurt yourself, Turbo.
Right. And it's not like he was, extremely prescient at that time of the situation or had some kind of insider information. This is a man who repeats every conspiracy theory he's ever heard. I mean, it's one thing to say, like, oh, this journalist that everyone thinks is crazy and no one believes any of his stories. Well, here's one that's actually being backed up by major news organizations. What do you think of him now? Maybe you should go back and look at the other things that he's talking about, and maybe there's some truth to that too, because this is evidence of that person's character. This isn't evidence of Alex Jones' character or credibility or competency.
Well,
it's just him repeating something that people were talking about in rumor that happened to have some truth to it.
Well, the last time, I don't know if he's been on Joe Rogan's show since this appearance. The last time I saw Alex Jones on, he was drinking Jack Daniels, smoking weed with Joe Rogan, and announced that interdimensional psychic vampires were controlling pedophiles. And I was like, okay, is he just high and drunk out of his mind? Is he fucking with us? Is he being serious? So, like I said, I got to take it with a lot of grains of salt here.
There's so many grains. I mean, there's many grains of salt. There's a whole mine of salt to be taken with Alex Jones. There's an unhealthy serving that should be added to Joe Rogan. And then there's a decent sprinkling from your standard press. Because, well, look at the Bernie Sanders interview that Joe Rogan did, right? They had a long conversation about policy, about America, about all kinds of things. And at the very end, Joe Rogan got high enough to ask him, if he becomes president, will he reveal if there are aliens or not? And that was the big story the next day. Bernie Sanders says whether he'll reveal the alien secret if he becomes president.
It's true.
So yeah, I mean, like, I'm not saying that's why I was kind of digging a little bit more, because I'm not as familiar with Joe Rogan. I know him. I've seen clips and listened to a little bit of his show, but I don't know how serious he is about one thing or another. And he, like many podcasters, he says a lot of things all the time, right? And you just take one comment and then report on that. That tells me nothing. But I'm more curious about whether is or not pushing this as evidence that we should be listening to Alex Jones, or if he's just merely laying out the coincidence as we were, that, hey, look, in this instance, he happened to be right.
That's essentially what the article was saying.
Oh, I said the article was saying what? That he was laying out the coincidence, or that he's
laying out the coincidence.
Okay. Yeah.
Good times. All right.
Can we stop talking about kid fucking? Why does it come up like once a month?
Because people still fuck kids. I don't understand. If I'm a billionaire, can't you buy
a hooker?
Buy barely
Regular
legal
billionaire.
pussy. Buy 18-year-old pussy if you want young pussy. Move to a state where the age of consent is 16, 17. I don't, like, seriously, what the fuck, folks?
Move to Thailand. Go nuts.
I don't know.
How does that make sense, though? Are you anti-kid fucking or anti-people breaking the law?
Fair point. Because I heard it as soon as I said it.
somewhere there's a 12-year-old Taiwanese boy whose anus won't shut after a busy Chinese New Year, who's like, "Fuck them Americans over there on that unregimented podcast." Assholes, don't send them here.
Hey, they're coming anyway. We don't have to send them.
Yeah, pedophiles tend to find where they can go commit that shit. It doesn't need to be advertised. It's not like you have to take, ad space out during the Super Bowl. They seem to find that shit on their own well enough. So, yeah.
Unregimented. ChristopherMedia.net.
Imagine the greatest collection of real-life entertainment on the planet, all in one place. Go ahead. Dare to stream with Discovery Plus. 55,000 episodes from networks like TLC, HGTV, Food Network, and more. If you can dream it, you can stream it. See what I did there? Discovery Plus. Stream now. Stream what you love.
ChristopherMedia.net. Unregimented.
All right. Well, do we want to move on from this? Because I get the feeling that this is going to be one of those subjects that probably every couple weeks there's going to be a legit revelation that's going to come out that is going to be like, worth talking about. And I mean, we should just get all our speculation out on this one and just make a pact not to dive in again on this subject with speculation, only to go with facts.
Depends on how interesting the story gets.
Well, you want to talk about a fact before we move on? Did you guys hear about the painting they found of Bill Clinton in his house on Pedophile Island or whatever the fuck it's called?
That's
Bill
a fact?
Clinton in a blue dress. Well, yeah, I seen a picture of it. It's Bill Clinton in a blue dress wearing a pair of red heels.
It's a painting of Bill Clinton?
Yes, a painting. Not a
painting.
Picture.
Yeah, it's a painting.
So, what does that tell us?
I don't know, because the dress is apparently...
Are we supposing...
The same dress that Hillary was photographed in. This blue dress. It's the exact
Clinton
same
in
dress.
blue dress. I think of the Lewinsky dress.
Maybe.
Right.
Yeah, and I doubt Hillary was like, "So you're really turned on by chicks who blow you in blue dresses? Let me go out and buy a blue dress." I think that part of their relationship is long over with. So, yeah. She's not dressing sexy for Bill.
I don't know what that proves at all. I
They're
certainly
very
don't think that it... I don't think that it proves that Bill Clinton stood in a dress and posed for a painting. I mean, he's a famous figure.
Well, let's be honest here. If I'm a billionaire and I've got, or even a half a billionaire, and I've got like pretty much every need and want met, but I'm friends with somebody and I want to bust his balls, I might get a painting of like Earl from Sporgy in a dress and hang it in my house.
That's what I was thinking. Well, this is either an artist just doing social commentary, or maybe this is some kind of gag gift that somebody actually gave him, or somebody involved with it. And Clinton was just like, "I'm just going to leave this here. I can't take it home."
I sent you guys the picture. It is strange.
I doubt Bill's legs look that good. I'm just going to go ahead and say that right now. Like, seriously.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you look at this picture, he's smiling, he's pointing at, like, this is not, Bill Clinton didn't pose for this painting.
Yeah.
Somebody made this painting, and it probably had no connection to him, Bill Clinton, being there or not. I mean, and that's not to say that Bill Clinton was or wasn't there. I just know it is weird.
Just why would you have it in general?
Why would you have anything, though? I mean, it's a piece of art.
Yeah, I got a picture of our 42nd president in a fucking dress. Here you go. Maybe this is rich people stuff I don't understand.
Well, I mean, weren't there
people...
rumors of J. Edgar Hoover people having paintings of J. Edgar Hoover in like women's lingerie and shit? Is this maybe this is like just a frat boy level humor way of like fucking with somebody, like, ha ha ha, look, we emasculated him. You know what I'm saying? Like, we put Bill in a dress. Isn't that funny?
Right. I mean, if you're middle class, you share the photoshopped meme. And if you're filthy rich, you actually have somebody make the painting.
Yeah,
It's like, it's going to cost how much? I don't care. It's going to be so worth it.
And yeah, it does seem like a very drunk, coked up, middle of the night thing to commission, especially if it's like, how much to do it? $3,000. Here, it just I just threw a wad of money at you. Just give me back my change.
That would be so great. Let's do it right now tonight. My portrait artist is actually on the yacht right now. Let's get her in here. We can get started.
I got my coat guy on board, so I can keep him up all night painting.
Right, and I bet you Bill Clinton has enough of a sense of humor about himself that maybe he did see this, and I bet he found it entertaining. Look, it's kind of like here's Penn Jillette has a theory, right? Penn Jillette's theory is based on some facts. These facts are after Donald Trump won the election and the transfer of power happened, and Barack Obama was free to no longer have to be America's Superman, and he could just retire. He went on to a yacht, and on that yacht was Bruce Springsteen. So the two of them are on a yacht together, and he says, he has no proof that there was a guitar on that yacht, but given that Bruce Springsteen was on that yacht, it's a pretty safe bet that there was probably a guitar on that yacht. At some point, Bruce was playing guitar, and we know that Obama likes to sing because we've heard him sing in public. So his theory is that they went out on that yacht and sang for nobody else to hear, "Born in Kenya." And that's kind of how I see this painting.
And then Bill sung, "Used to Love Her." And then Obama was like, "I could top it, Bill. I could top it." He starts singing "One in a Million." And at that point, Epstein walks in and goes, "I can top all of it. Check out this painting." So seriously. Look, I've done enough dumb shit with my friends, and we've had enough inside jokes, and we've really got, when we were younger, especially when we felt we had nothing to lose, because we were like, none of us will ever run for office. We got pretty fucking heinous towards each other. I mean, no names will be named, but there's a few pictures floating around that if they ever got out, I think they better hope statute of limitations is up. That's what I'm saying. So I don't read too much into this. I just was like, I don't know if that's a real painting that was found, or if this is something that someone put together real quick online and was like, I just throw it out there while all this misinformation's flying around.
So this is from a news story, right, Chris?
Yeah.
You didn't find this on 8chan.
No. First of all, I don't know how to get to 8chan.
Well, there is no 8chan anymore, so it's problem solved.
No, it was seized from Fuck Island or Orgy Island or whatever you call it.
Yeah, so it's a real painting. It exists. It's just, I don't know. I think people are going to see that one painting and extrapolate a lot of information from that.
Well, I think it's safe to say that
it would be a real reach.
I think it's safe to say
light logs are more damning.
It's safe to say that people that are going to want to defend Clinton are going to go, well, I would never do that to a friend. And people who are going to want to paint it all as, Bill Clinton was like, maybe Trump fucked a 14 or 15-year-old once or twice, but Clinton was doing it all the time. Look how good of friends they are. He was able to paint, hang that picture, and Clinton didn't get mad about it. So like you said, people are going to take from it what they want to.
I think the initial reaction, if you're already thinking that Clinton is somehow implicated with the whole conspiracy and behind Epstein, that this would paint him as a pervert, right? See, here's proof that he not only went to these places, but he participated in perverted behavior. He wore a dress.
Don't kink shame our former president.
I'm not kink shaming.
That's why it was funny you said it, and that's why I said it to you, because you're the least likely to do that amongst us. But look, this I guess this is a conspiracy theory I believe in. I have to. I really doubt anyone who visited that place more than once, twice at the most. And if they went back, they had at least an inkling of an idea of what was going on. And if you are a frequent visitor, yeah, I'm sorry, you probably did some shit. I mean, let's be honest, Bill Clinton and his dick are almost two separate entities, man, it seems like. I don't know.
Well, here's my theory on it, though. And then we can get off the kid fucking. Because it's like, can we stop talking about kid fucking? We're like, another 20 or 30 minutes and we'll be done. But here's my theory on it. I don't think that you get away with running this operation for this long if that is the sole reason for coming. I think that you hide this behavior amongst providing an environment where a lot of rich people want to come and hang out and do shit. And there's that inner circle that really knows what this place is about.
Well, yeah, because I did hear someone say that, and that made a lot of sense. Rich people can't go anywhere in the last, 10, 15 years? That's when we started having cameras on every phone without having to look over their shoulder or make sure no one's taking a picture. I mean, it's just a horrible idea. But if they just wanted to go and let their hair down and party like a bunch of fucking, not high school, but college students, this was their safe space to do so. That doesn't, and, someone pointed out that doesn't necessarily mean everyone was fucking kids. Now, that does probably mean they were doing shit that might have been illegal or they didn't want pictures taken of.
Yeah.
I mean, that happens in the sports world all the time.
But there is probably a healthy amount of victimless behavior going on there. I'm not saying that in defense of it.
No, I get what you're saying.
It doesn't lessen the crime, but it does make more sense when you think about how does this happen and nobody talks about it.
Well, no, there was a whole football team from the coaches to the least, I know this doesn't mean anything to you, but the long snapper on the team that would rent a yacht, go out in the middle of a lake in Minnesota and have these fucking Caligula type parties out there with hookers and drugs and shit. And it got exposed and everyone was like, oh, how horrible. I'm shocked. And I'm like, how's it any different than a bunch of the guys going to the strip club and going home with a bunch of strippers? I mean,
I was actually thinking of a strip club analogy myself, because this would be like finding out that there was some prostitution going on at strip clubs, which happens, and then extrapolating from there that everybody who's been in and out of that strip club has fucked somebody in that strip club. Which I can tell you, I've been in enough strip clubs and I've never actually had sexual contact with anyone, so I can tell you it's not just a given. They are not just throwing it at you.
Yeah, but you weren't making it rain with $100 bills either.
No.
You know what I'm saying? You weren't going in with 10,000 and getting, another 20 out of the ATM or through the bar or whatever.
I think I've paid for a lap dance for somebody else, but I've never paid for a lap dance for myself. So no, I wasn't there on business.
So to say. You weren't looking to go home with stripper sweat, aka glitter, all over you. Yeah, I got you. Well, just on a side note, and it is only connected to this story because of the Bill Clinton thing. I think it's interesting that a week ago they announced that the next season of American Crime Story, which is the show that did the People versus O.J. Simpson and the Versace murders miniseries, their next one is going to be the Clinton Lewinsky scandal, and she is a executive producer on the show. And of course, someone was like, "Well, you know why she did that? Because after Epstein turned up dead, and all the other people on the Clinton body count turned up dead. She's like, I better keep a high profile if we're going to do this story and be an executive producer."
Which the producer wouldn't do it without her. He said he wouldn't do the story without her point of view.
Yeah. By the way, I'm not buying into. I'm just for comedic fodder. It's okay. You know what I'm saying? That's what you do. You take absurd shit and you laugh at it if you can find a way.
She seems to be really well adjusted and is rather lighthearted about the situation these days, actually.
Well, I mean,
What was there was the statement from Mike Pence about, or I think it was actually in a tweet that he put out, that there was something about, the character of this nation, what's going on, and that we would all be better off if we spent more time on our knees, which of course he means praying, but everyone took as oral sex. And I think Monica Lewinsky's response was just the wide open eyeballs, like,
well, yeah,
like, no, thank you.
I mean, you gotta give it. It's a bad choice of words. You gotta hand it to her how she's dealt with it, because would we all want dumb shit we did when we were 21 to define us? I know I wouldn't.
Man, but I mean, if
granted, hers is a little more high profile than shit we did.
If I was known for eating
all of
Margaret
America
Thatcher out so
judged
good,
me,
she squirted all over me. If that's what I was known for, I'd walk around going, "Yeah, I got old iron bitch to squirt. What do you think I'm gonna do to you? Come here, baby." You know what I'm saying?
Imagine if everyone's opinion, granted the people that don't know you, but all these people in America who have no idea who you really are, but have an opinion about you based on who you fucked when you were 21.
Oof.
I'm just going to say that again. Pitch that in your mind, all right?
I used to drink a lot. So.
So in other words, all my friends, my entire group of friends. You hang out with Eric, you hear the stories.
So yeah. You have to hand it to her. She's. I mean, sure, she tried to spin it into a career. What else are you gonna fucking do? At least she tried to make something out of it.
And I'll say this: like, I've seen recent pictures of her, and I'm like, okay, go ahead, you cleaned up well. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you looked like that back in the day, I could kind of understand why Billy was like, "Hey, how you doing?" But
well, it's a new dress.
Yeah.
Cleaned up well.
Yeah, she doesn't smell like pennies and seawater in Bill Clinton's ball sack. So yeah, that's a plus. Always.
Oh, it looks like oatmeal.
It comes out clumpy. You want cream of wheat or grits?
A few clumps and then just a puff of dust.
Linda Tripp's looking at the dress going, did you eat some like Quaker Oats and then have a powdered donut afterwards? What happened to this dress? No, that's what Bill puts out. That's his product.
That's the presidential nut.
Oh, Christ Jesus. All right. So, see, I told you one about kid fucking.
Just regular fucking.
And hey, who can't get behind that? Pun not intended. But,
true.
Oh, God. All right.
Well,
so we want to move on
this
to more
week
serious
in mass
shit.
shootings.
Yeah. Is this okay? Now, forgive me for parsing language, but I just wanted to ask:
Yes.
Is this considered a mass shooting? Because this was, from what I gather, police went there looking to execute a drug warrant, and ran into motherfuckers who watched too much Colors and Boys in the Hood and decided to shoot it out.
I would guess this wouldn't. The FBI would not classify this as a mass shooting.
Why more than 3 people got
terrorism.
shot?
I don't.
Isn't that their
Maybe
classification?
You're right. And I think there's more to it than that.
We looked at a meme last week with a whole bunch of people who weren't just white people that said what 2019's mass shooters so far, and it included gang violence, and it included people who were involved in gang violence. So I mean, by the FBI's own definition, doesn't this qualify?
See, to me, it's not.
Wait. Back that whole statement up. Are we following the meme or the FBI? Those are two different standards.
No, this was according to the FBI's statistics.
Yeah.
So the meme was about the FBI statistics.
Yes. And by the way, I did some more research on that meme, and that's an incomplete list. There's even more people. That was just the ones who apparently had the most, what do you call it, were reported on the most. There were other mass shooting incidents that weren't reported in the national news. So I'm assuming those are probably ones that weren't in highly populated areas. You know what I'm saying? So, maybe a domestic dispute where someone shot their whole family or some shit. I mean, I don't know. But no, see, to me, the difference isn't whether or not it's organized crime related, terrorism related, just someone snapping and going nuts, like it seems like the Toledo shooter did. Because I will say this:
you keep wanting to get Toledo.
God damn it!
Rich.
Fuck! I'm sorry.
People in Toledo are going, what the fuck?
I know, man. Shit, Dayton, whatever. Ohio shooter. There, I'll just say that. Just keep it vague. Yeah, because there doesn't seem to be any like manifesto at all behind that. No rhyme, no reason. That just seems like that dude was seriously disturbed, and I don't even know if politics played a role in that. I just think his mental illness fucking tipped him over the edge because he started with his sister and her friend.
Oh, that's a right talking point, Rich.
No, that's from what we can see a factual talking point. I'm not
I know.
trying to spin it in a political way whatsoever. Because
specifically, though, what's the right talking point? The mental illness angle?
Yeah.
Right.
But see, it's a piece of a puzzle, of a larger puzzle. All these pieces fit together. It's not one piece. You can't hold up one piece of a puzzle and go, I see the whole picture. And that's what fucking everybody's trying to do, because we want to keep everything very simple and easy and digestible. And this is not a simple, easy, digestible subject, because humans aren't that. For as many simple humans walking around, believe me, they're still rather complex. If you're trying to deal with them.
If you're talking about gun control, these are three different situations, right? From what I understand, we have one shooter who purchased weapons legally. We have another shooter who purchased legal weapons but got access to illegal modifications. And then we have another shooter who just straight up had weapons that he purchased on the black market, I would assume.
I guess.
So there is really no narrative on gun control there. I mean, and the mental illness angle is interesting because we don't have a good definition of what is mental illness, right? Like, if we want to agree that we don't want people who are mentally ill and to the point where they're likely to harm themselves or others to have access to this weaponry, that's great. But if we're just talking about we have to have a mental illness standard for owning weapons, then what does that standard look like? Because we don't even have a standard for defining mental illness. Mental illness could be, I got depressed after a relative died and spent some months on an antidepressant.
Well, yeah, there's this.
Is that the type of person who shouldn't have a weapon?
Well, I hear what you're saying, Aaron, because there's this thing that Mandy always refers to. It's some kind of psychological journal, and it's
DSM-5.
Yeah, and it's the definitions in there is she's even said they've gotten so loose with everything that there's so much gray area now.
Well, we're also in a period of transition. Well, there's different.
Well,
we're in a period of transition where certain terms are being redefined and moved from mental illness to something different, and et cetera, et cetera.
Are being moved, and people are allowing this because this is just blowback from a situation that people have tried to take advantage of. Oh, I can be defined as mentally ill in some way, and it's not. People aren't going to think that I was in a straitjacket in a padded cell, right? Mm-hmm. I can be quote unquote normally mentally ill, and I can use that classification to justify my behavior when accused of some kind of wrongdoing or crime, get some kind of special treatment, be on some kind of government assistance program or something like that, be considered disabled, I can't work, and I'm not saying that anyone with any kind of mental illness is using it to game a system. I'm saying that when you start loosening these definitions, I mean, you get it's the same situation with like pets on planes. We start loosening these rules and go, we want people to, we understand that people have certain anxieties and they handle these situations differently. So we want to be accommodating to everyone. I'm not saying that anxiety is mental illness, but yeah.
The example she always uses is autism, the autism spectrum, on how it's moved so much over the last 20 years that you could argue that everybody's on the spectrum now at some point.
Right.
Definitely.
And shit, if you want to talk about the reason they call it a spectrum because it is that broad. There's a big difference between a person on one end that is face blind, doesn't know how to empathize with other people, to another one on the other end just doesn't know how to stop talking about Star Wars at a party.
I feel personally attacked by this relatable content.
Unregimented. ChristopherMedia.net. ChristopherMedia.net. Unregimented.
So, I mean, the autism spectrum is a perfect example because we now have this mental illness spectrum, and not only can we be on the lighter, more socially acceptable side of it, but still have the advantages that might come with the sympathies and special treatment. But we can also hop on and off of it now. So, if we want to have a serious conversation about people who are mentally ill and what type of access they have to anything that could harm themselves or others, well, that's a good conversation to have in the future once we decide what the actual definition of mental illness is.
Well, I mean,
and I'm not saying it's like good one way or the other, right? Because if you want to decide that the definition of mental illness is very broad and it applies to a lot of people in this country, and therefore a lot of people in this country shouldn't have weapons, okay. As long as we're all agreeing on this as a country, I'm okay with that.
Well, I mean, to backtrack a little bit, and as far as like kind of muddled definitions, Chris, when you brought up why isn't this considered or being reported as a mass shooting, I think it's kind of like the Waco situation. That wasn't reported as a mass shooting. Any situation where law enforcement initiates the contact, to me, falls under, and to a lot of other people from what I've read and articles I've read on it, because this has been a discussion going on since, this shit in Philadelphia happened yesterday. It falls under like standoff. You know what I'm saying? Like
right. I mean, if one cop barged in there and shot 6 people, you wouldn't call it a mass shooting.
No, but if a drug task force for Philadelphia goes to move in, or the gang squad goes to move in, and they meet heavily armed, ready resistance.
Yeah.
He
wasn't looking through his window, found some cops walking down the street and started sniping at him, and that's how all this started. That would fit the definition of mass shooting because, the difference is that the shooter is initiating the event.
Well, it's just like a mass shooting. By the definition that we're given as of today for a mass shooting could be a drive-by shooting that takes out 4 or 5 people, but it's that now, is that a mass shooting that's a terrorist attack? I mean, it does strike terror in the hearts of people that are around when it happens, but it's not done with an ideology behind it. It's done with criminal intent behind it. It's the intent.
If we now have a mass shooter spectrum that we broaden the definition of, we don't really end up with more useful data. We end up with a lot of white noise. We don't have complete narratives that we can piece together and go, what's going on in this country that some people are turning to violence that we wouldn't expect, right? Because how do we stop, shootouts with drug dealers and between gangs and stuff like that, and inner city crime? That's a valid conversation too, but that's a totally different conversation.
Well, so to me, what you hit the nail on the head. It turns into white noise after everybody starts interjecting their little, passion project or feelings into the situation. It's like that's the problem with, well, everybody, what do you say? What do you say? And we're going to add it all up. Well, some people, it's okay to have an opinion, but we don't really need to take their opinion into consideration. When it comes to the space program, we all have opinions. NASA isn't calling us up to ask them. There's a reason for that, and a good reason for it, by the way, because fuck you, send them to Mars. That's not a solid plan to get to Mars. All right. It's just not, which I think I just quoted Trump's plan to get to Mars. Fuck it, we're going to Mars. Oh, okay. All right. But Yeah, the thing in Philadelphia, if this is some form of an organized, crime, and I don't mean organized as in mafia, just a group of people committing crimes together, organized wise, not necessarily La Cosa Nostra, then it's not. There's never a good shooting. You know what I'm saying? When in this type of situation, but I think we're just a little too raw from the other two shootings that just happened, and some people are just hitting that panic button.
Well,
I mean,
how do you guys feel about the term? Instead of talking about mass shootings, instead of trying to find a common link between any incident that involves 3 or more people, which seems arbitrary, why aren't we talking more about domestic terrorism? I think that the 2 shootings that happened over last weekend both classify for that. And that I don't see how the incident in Philadelphia would qualify at all.
I can see how El Paso would. I see Dayton, that was just a nut job.
Yeah, Dayton.
Well, yeah, but I agree, nut job. But what makes Dayton a nut job and not El Paso? Both of them decided to take up arms for some reason.
There's no manifesto with the Dayton guy. There's a manifesto with the El Paso dude. He clearly laid out his motivations.
Everything I've read about the Ohio shooting or shooter, his political beliefs were completely on the opposite side of what we think of when we think of a domestic terrorist. And the Texas shooting, his political beliefs are damn near lockstep in what we think of. I mean, it is damn near the blueprint of what we think of when we think domestic terrorist. Mm-hmm. That's why I said like this, the Dayton shooter, see, I got it right once. He apparently in high school had like kill list and rape list, and those weren't politically motivated. Those were just people he didn't like. I mean, like, Happy Gilmore when he calls Steve Buscemi and he goes, "I'm sorry, I tortured you in high school," and Steve Buscemi crosses him off his kill list. I mean, I'm not trying to make light of the situation, but that's like, that's how I picture this guy. I picture this guy being a nutbag like that.
I'm with you, and I agree.
That's why I say that is not an act of domestic terror, because there was no political oomph behind it, no religious oomph behind it.
So if we're figuring out what bucket to put all of these incidents in, then El Paso goes into domestic terrorism.
Yeah, him and Timothy McVeigh are peas in the same pod.
Okay, that's great, because I was gonna try and come up with some other examples that fit into that. So that's a perfect one. The Dayton, Ohio shooter goes into mass shooting bucket, right? We'll call it.
Yeah, and people have tried to pay...
any of the school shootings, the theater shooting, those types of incidents, that's what's going into that bucket, right?
No, not if there's an ideology behind them.
What do you consider? Let's take Columbine. Which bucket do you put it in?
Mass shooting. There's no political, like I said, no political or religious oomph, to quote Rich. They were just pissed off.
Yeah.
Like the Orlando nightclub shooting.
There's a difference of motivation here in one's attachment to the society as well, right?
But Rich, that's
like a mass shooting. A mass shooting is something that happens to somebody when they feel ostracized from society and they no longer have those ties that one has, where what does it matter if you're breaking the rules or the laws of the society? You feel like you're above all that. Whereas what happened in El Paso and with Timothy McVeigh is more about they're doing it for the society, right? They feel like they're doing something to save this country. They're doing what other politicians and people should be doing but aren't, so they have to do it.
And that's what makes Pulse. That's domestic terrorism. He was there's ideology behind it. He was targeting a group of people.
Right.
And I remember that because people were trying to say, well, because he came from a Muslim family, this and that. And if I'm remembering my facts correctly, that was of course how it was initially reported. People that are happy just to go with that and run with it did so. People that were like, okay, let's wait okay, that's part of the puzzle, but let's wait and put a couple more pieces together before we start saying what this thing is. Right. It turned out that he was kind of he was like a self-hating gay man. Like that factored in. Like he had gay experiences. He had frequented that club. And then he couldn't deal with it, so he snapped, and he was like, I'm going to go kill me some gay guys, because he couldn't handle his own sexuality. So, but to me, that still is an act of terror. That's just an act of terror because he targeted a specific person. A guy who
Look, there's going to be some overlap, and there's not clear lines that are delineating this, but I think it's a useful exercise because that's part of what we do as humans is we categorize things. It allows us to tackle things directly, right? And what we're really trying to tackle as a society is figuring out what the motivations are. The motivations, which is what you guys helped me understand, was the difference between what we would classify as domestic terrorism and mass shooting, and also I think what would separate the incident in Philadelphia. Everyone's motivations are different. And until we understand the motivations behind these incidents, we're not going to be able to tackle these problems as a society to figure out what types of plans can we do. Is it about safety nets? Is it about not allowing people to find themselves in situations where they feel like this is the answer? Is it gun control? Is it addressing mental health? The motivations behind a person who starts shooting at cops after they get in a standoff with them because it's either that or they feel like they're going to go to jail and it's going to ruin their lives anyway. Those motivations are wholly different from these other incidents that happened last weekend, right? Yeah. This guy's motivations are, he probably, if we were to guess, his motivations are he lives in a poor community, doesn't have a lot of opportunities. The way to make money and provide for the people that he cares about is to break the law and sell drugs, and these are the consequences of that, right? That's become a lifestyle. That's it's not much of a choice, but it's a choice that the person made.
The question I had about this guy, though, is, we talk about all the time on the Weedsman. How many people are in jail, probably in Pennsylvania right now, for having some weed? This guy had a rap sheet a mile long that was mostly gun charges, which essentially says he's a violent person, but he's out on the street. Yeah. How's that work?
Well, that's that wonderful war on drugs that we've been fighting since the early 70s, that really ramped up in the 80s. Where they're actually releasing people who've committed violent crimes because of mandatory minimums to people who commit drug crimes, even if no violence was involved in their crime. Mandatory minimum is just that. You have to serve the minimum. And when prison overcrowding happens, you can't let loose the people who got caught with 2 pounds of weed, but the guy who's got 3 domestic assaults and an attempted murder or something, well, he hasn't tried to kill anyone in a couple of years in prison. He's up for parole. We'll put him on probation.
Well, right, but this just illustrates what I'm talking about. Once you start examining the motivations, then you can talk about, how did we get to this situation in the first place? Whether all these incidents classify as a mass shooting just based on number of people shot, if that's the bar, then that tells us nothing. It's when we start looking at the Philly situation in particular, and for example, that, like you said, we start asking other questions of why is this person out on the streets? Should he have been behind jail? Why aren't we doing something about violent criminals before it gets to this point? Whereas there's wholly different questions in Dayton, and honestly, I don't even know what those questions are.
It's too.
You're
hitting on a good point. Why are we classifying drive-by shootings with things like El Paso?
Right.
Well, we know why. Because certain groups of people wanted the definition of mass shooting to be lowered so they could pump their stats up. And this is a byproduct of that they probably didn't. In their mind, they were they were doing the right thing to draw attention to, this, so that, if we call a mass shooting 3, because I've even heard 3 or more, 4 or more. Hold on, let me finish. 3 or 4 or more. They think they're doing it for the right reason, but then they didn't see that this is going to be a byproduct of that, and that wasn't their intent. But it's like, yeah, well.
But if your belief is that the answer to all 3 of these problems is gun control, then that is valid behavior to say, look, we want to set the bar here for the definition of mass shooting because all these classify and all of these problems would be solved if we controlled weapons the way that we should in this country. I'm not saying that myself. I'm saying that as somebody who is for very strict gun control.
No, I got
if you believe that the answer,
how does that work for us?
Saying is, if you believe that the answer to all of these situations is gun control, then that behavior is justifiable, in my opinion. I just don't believe that gun control solves all of these issues.
Nope.
Because as we talked about before, each one of these parties obtain their guns in different ways.
Yeah. Again, weed has been illegal in Michigan up until last year. We've all managed to get weed quite regularly until last year. People who want shit will get shit.
Well, I'm sure you guys know the answer to this. Hasn't there been studies or whatever that have proven that it's in a lot of cases it's easier for people who are under the drinking age to get weed, and even in places where it's illegal, than it is for them to get alcohol? I mean, because if they don't have alcohol in the home, that's usually where people get their alcohol from. At least when they're younger, they steal it from their parents.
Because people make these connections between access and control, right? Does a certain group have access to something, and does the government control it in a certain way? And they're figuring that tighter control always means less access. There's some stories going around this week about teens across the Midwest that were some of them being hospitalized because of breathing problems. This came from vaping.
Mm-hmm. Now, and if you read those stories, it's regional. It's going to come back to a product, because if you look at it, it's all in the same area.
These are teens, people who are underage, who are not supposed to be buying legally any tobacco product, that are coming up with these symptoms. And what we know from vaping, from just seeing it all around us, teens are not the only ones vaping. Many people of all ages are doing this. Mm-hmm. So why do we only see the teens being affected by this? Because they're obtaining their product illegally. So the control of the market is actually working negatively against a party that still has access to it.
Oh, yeah. I had a
Only
friend
the access is to a more dangerous product than what is being controlled on the legal market.
I had a friend who, when he started vaping, he lived in Detroit, and he was going to like the corner party store and buying their vape juice. And I was like, dude, no.
Yeah.
He's like, why? I'm like, you don't know what the fuck is in there, dude. I'm like, let me ask you a question. When you open up a quote unquote new bottle, do you break a seal? He's like, no, most time it's open, but aren't they all so you can like sniff them? And I'm like, no. I'm like, dude, I know it's cheaper, but save yourself future hassle by spending a few bucks more now. Just go to a Wild Bill's or go to a legit shop, because then at least the chance, I'm not saying you won't get garbage, but the chances of getting garbage go down significantly. Going to the corner, party store and buying an open bottle and then trusting it, I wouldn't buy an open bottle from a legit shop.
This is tangentially related. We'll get us back there, but Earl asked me earlier this week, hey, is CBD legit? And I had to tell him, you have to do your homework. It depends. It's not regulated right now. Get it from, go to a reputable shop. Make sure it's a reputable manufacturer. Yes, do your fucking homework. Don't just buy, just crazy shit because somebody told you. Yeah,
Right. Just don't take the recommendation of the guy at the video store.
Yeah. When I heard you could
They're
buy
selling this shit everywhere.
when you can buy CBD at Family Video, I was like, what? How do these two things
Family
go together?
Video?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they advertise it out front.
Yeah. Big old sidewalk sign. CBD available here. And I'm just like, why would I go to Family Video for my CBD oil or whatever the fuck? It makes no sense. It's like going to Jack Kevorkian for, an open heart surgery or something. Like, I'm good, Jack. I'll find another doctor. I'm good. I've seen your mortality rate.
But the whole point of this is regulation can sometimes be good, I guess. I think is what we were kind of getting at.
Well, there's also,
it's not about whether regulation can be good or bad. It's thinking that tighter regulation, tighter constriction of certain things, whatever you want it to be, guns, tobacco, alcohol, marijuana, automobiles, any kind of things that we put age and competency restrictions on. It's not about whether they're good or bad. It's about looking at all the data and adjusting your regulation based on that, and not just going blindly, oh, well, we said in the law that, no one under 18 can get this product. So that means all the teens are protected because,
yeah, but
if your regulations are ending up with people still having access to that product, but a more dangerous version of that product, then your regulations aren't actually helping society.
sometimes they don't help at all in general. I've been buying cigarettes since I was 15. You're supposed to be 18 to buy them.
Yeah,
we're back to people who want shit.
They don't help at all. It's understanding that regulations aren't going to...
Doesn't stop access
in every situation. That's not, though, an argument to go, well, we shouldn't have age limits because they're meaningless.
No, but it's an argument that says people who want shit will get it. No, you can put you put all the roadblocks up you want. If somebody wants something bad enough, they will find out a way to get it.
Well,
but that goes in the subject of acceptable loss. Understanding that things are going to happen, certain groups are going to get access to things that they feel like they need or want, regardless, shouldn't come into play when considering how to regulate that product. You should really take the general public more in mind.
Well, and I mean, I hate to play the generation card, but I mean, it is just a fact. It was a lot more fast and loose when we were younger. I mean, I won't name any names, but I've had a family member who's considerably younger than me on a visit to go see him and other family members. You know, him and his friends were begging me, oh, could you buy us some beer? And I'm like, guys, you're like 19, 20. You can't find a way to get booze on your own? No, man, no. It ain't like when you were 19, 20, man. And I'm like, really?
Oh yeah, the licenses are shaped different now. Oh yeah.
Like, yeah, I actually had a problem out of state when I was younger. They were like, yeah, let me see your ID. I used to have a problem because some states, they scan your ID, and if you have an out of state ID, they're like, that won't come up on our system, and I don't know. I don't know a Michigan license. And I'm like, what? It's it's a picture ID. Look at it. Look at me. Do you want my social security card?
Do I look 16?
Okay, but wait, guys, we're only talking about tobacco and alcohol and products like that. In relation to other types of control, how does this relate to gun control?
Because gun control.
How do you base the behavior? How do you look at a criminal who got access to a weapon and base your gun control policies on that? Unless you're actually going to trace the life of that gun and find out where it originally came from and plug up that loophole. I mean, just using it as a statistic is just white noise.
Well, there's a lot of misinformation floating around. Like, I don't know if you remember last week I said, I know there's background checks in the state of Michigan, but that's the only place I've ever bought a firearm. But I know they have background checks here. There are background checks in all 50 states. Some even still have those 3-day waiting periods. Think of The Simpsons. 3 days, but I'm angry now. that type of thing. So there are background checks. I guess what is being pushed for now is a federal database that supersedes the state level database background checks. And if that's the case, yeah, I'm a little leery of that. Like, really? You already do an FBI background check on me when I go to buy a gun. Why do I need to go into some federal database? You know what I'm saying? Like, especially because we're all emotional because of 2 shootings on top of each other. And what happens when people get emotional and start screaming at politicians, do something? We end up with shit like the Patriot Act. And people just go, oh, okay, well, we're safer. All right, great, wonderful. And years later, they're like, wait a minute, they're listening to everything we do? Yeah, dipshit. And you told them to do it because you were scared at the time. And cooler heads did not prevail. So this myth that there's no background checks is bullshit. There are. They just want an overarching one. It's just like the gun show thing. What, like 1% to 3% of all gun sales in this country go through that gun show loophole? And no significant, like, crimes have ever been tracked to any guns sold in that loophole? Okay,
If it's a loophole where you're not tracking it, then how can you know?
Because they know the weapons are being sold.
Right.
And if crimes were committed, they could... I know you're not a gun guy, but every weapon has a serial number on it. If you burn that serial number off, you've committed a federal crime. You get caught with that, you do hard time. Yeah. So if a crime was committed with the gun, they may not know how you got it, but they'll know. I'm not a gun guy,
but I have seen The Wire, okay?
Okay.
So I know some shit.
I've never worked a ground stash, but I know I've seen The Wire. No, I got you. But yeah, so I mean, that's where the loophole. It's not tracking the gun. They can still do that. If you drop it in the street, if you drop it off at an anonymous like buyback program and it still has a serial number on it and it's not an ancient like weapon that's been grandfathered in for 60, 70 years, whatever the fuck, yeah, they can track it, but they don't know how you got it. That's the loophole.
Unregimented. ChristopherMedia.net.
Of all the streaming services out there, only one is different. Discovery Plus. It's the greatest collection of real-life entertainment on the planet. 55,000 episodes of food, love, true crime, home, from networks like TLC, HGTV, and tons more. Yes! With stars like Chip and Jo, an exclusive new series from 90 Day Fiancé, all in one place. Bam! Discovery Plus. Stream now. Stream what you love.
ChristopherMedia.net. Unregimented.
Okay, well, let me ask you this then. Let's go back to our 3 buckets and look at the 3 incidents, right? So we have, within the last 10 days or so, 3 different shooting incidents, multiple people getting shot, and we've classified them as 3 different motivations. How does gun control apply to each one of those situations? Let's start with El Paso.
I don't know any facts about how he bought his weapons. So if you guys do,
I think as far as we know, he purchased his guns legally.
Yes, I believe that is correct.
So what type of gun control would be an answer to stop this shooting?
A gun ban.
I think that's the answer. That's the answer is
maybe
very
mental
strict
competency test.
Very strict UK and Australian style gun control, where pretty much only government officials have weapons. The general public does not have access to it.
By the way, I just want to say real quick, I do find this highly chuckalicious. The same people on the left claiming that we have a literal Nazi in the White House, that we're building concentration camps along the southern border, want only the federal government, who this literal Nazi in their mind and the White House controls, to have weapons. That's funny to me. I mean, there's a hole in your logic. I'm just going to leave it to you to figure it out, because I can't point it out to you. If you don't see it, I'm not going to be able to point it out to you.
Aaron, my solution, does it have to be plausible, or can it be?
No, this is just a thought experiment. But
how about you get evaluated by a psychologist or a psychiatrist before you purchase a gun?
Well, see, then But in order to have that be a meaningful part of gun control, you have many other hurdles to jump through. And part of that is having a real definition of mental illness. So
just they give you like kind of like what the when they're trying to determine whether or not you're competent to stay in trial, just like a mental competency. Yes, this person's not a danger to himself or others. This person can have a gun.
But go down that road. What type of behavior would this guy, and we're just guessing, right? We know a little bit about his social media activity and stuff like that. And like you say, he has a manifesto. What type of behavior would be the red flags?
Anything considered outside the norm. Any extreme behavior.
Okay, so define that. Is liking and retweeting a post of a bunch of guns arranged to spell Trump a red flag for potential mental illness, violent behavior?
Yeah, seems like you're glorifying guns a little bit.
Okay, so glorifying weapons would be a qualifier for having somebody red flagged on applying for a weapon.
Might make me think twice, yeah.
Do you like Michael Bay movies? Do you listen to 80s hair metal? These are all red flags in my book.
So,
it's kind of subjective, man.
It is really subjective, right? I'm not trying to call anybody out. There's no wrong answers to any of this, but I think that really goes in the same category as super strict gun control. I think if you classify that behavior as red flagging somebody and maybe we don't want this person to have, then that's going to be a huge part of the population. At the point, you might as well have just very strict governmental control over weapons.
This? You got to take a test to drive a car. How about you take a test to own a gun?
Yeah, but we don't have a Bill of Rights guaranteeing you a right to drive a car.
That guy would pass that test, right? Why wouldn't that guy pass that test? I'm just trying to stay true to the question that I'm asking, which is what type of gun control would stop the El Paso shooter? And so far, we haven't come up with anything. Okay, that's a good answer, too. So looser gun control, right?
Yeah, but I could poke a hole in this right now. It happened in Texas where everybody... It happens in Texas where you can have a gun in your truck displayed publicly.
Oh, okay. Hold on. But that Walmart he went to specifically because, and this was a big story on NPR. He targeted and drove 6 hours to specifically because a lot of people come over the border from Mexico to shop there. You're not coming over the border with a fucking weapon, at least not legally. All right. So he knew, one, he was targeting most likely a lot of shoppers who came there from Juarez. Two, most likely the most unarmed Walmart, if that is, because it is known in whatever city it is, it's known as the Mexican Walmart. Yeah, and that's not meaning people who just speak Mexican. That means people who come across the border to shop there.
I know, but he's taking an awful big gamble that in a state like Texas, there weren't a couple of honkies in there carrying.
Your point is valid, but it's just a single piece of information. I don't think it helps us put together this puzzle.
No, but all the information matters, and that's
no, it doesn't. No, all the information matters is accepting a lot of white noise.
Well, I don't agree. If you want to put together a puzzle, all the pieces matter.
I think we've discovered the world's shittiest puzzle.
Well, let's define the puzzle that we're putting together, right? I'm not trying to put together the puzzle of one person's motivation. I'm trying to put together the puzzle of this person's example of behavior that happens in society and what type of gun control would make a difference in that. So in that respect, yeah, I think we need to examine motivation, certainly, but beyond that, I don't think it's helpful. So what we've come up with is it would take really extreme examples of gun control to stop something like El Paso from happening. What about Dayton?
Now, Dayton, I know what happened, how he got his weapons.
Okay.
He went to a friend of his and said, would you buy the weapons and keep them at your house because my family don't like guns? and they would get upset if they knew I had any.
Right.
And this is a friend, apparently, they go back, is a lot of years for relative to their age. And he said he knew nothing about these kill lists that this kid had wrote out, these rape lists. He knew nothing that he was harboring this ill will towards just humanity in general, because that's not the side of him he saw. In other words, apparently this kid was very adept at putting on one face for one person, another for another, et cetera, et cetera. And he's actually being charged, but he's not being charged as an accessory to the crime. He's being charged for illegally purchasing and lying on a federal document to buy a handgun or to buy a firearm.
Right.
So
this person's, the Dayton shooter's acquisition of weapons had nothing to do with any kind of loopholes in the restrictions of those weapons. Had everything to do with somebody just committing a crime to start with.
Exactly.
Inciting crime of handing over a weapon that wasn't registered to that person.
Which, by the way, you can file it under anecdotal evidence, but I know this to be a fact in quite a few cases of people I know personally. If you have a drug conviction, you can't own a firearm. But yet I know married couples who the husband might have a drug conviction from like when he was 18, 19. The wife doesn't. She has a firearm that's, in her name, but he's the one that uses it, takes it to the range, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. She just has to purchase anything involved with that firearm because he can't legally put his name on anything.
Wasn't there also a modification that was obtained, an extended clip for one of his weapons?
100-round drum, which I don't. This is where I'm like, okay. As far as I knew, those as of 1994 were outlawed. And in 2004, it could have been re-upped under Bush to extend it another 10 years. He opted not to. And I'm a little cloudy on this, so if my information is wrong, it's on me. I fully admit that now. What that means is that the production of these extended clips pretty much stopped in 94 for 10 years. I don't know if they picked back up after 2004, or because if you had an extended clip
around.
Yeah, because I bought a handgun in 99 with a 15-shot mag. So I had, my 9 had 15 in the mag, 1 in the pipe. And it was grandfathered in because it was a pre-94 magazine. But if I wanted to buy an extra magazine and it was a brand new one that didn't come with the weapon itself, I couldn't buy that. I can only buy, I believe, a 8 or 10 round mag. So I don't even know if this is something that he got legally or illegally. I don't even know if it's legal to have a 100-round drum mag.
So, right. I think everything that you're saying, though, is perfectly illustrating the fact that there's a lot of gray area going on in this incident. It's certainly not obtaining weapons and ammunition on the black market. It's not one buying them, and registering them legally either. So maybe this is a situation where actually it's not so much about changing how we control guns. It's more about actually effectively implementing the gun control that we already have.
Well, hey, guess what? There was another shooting in Philadelphia today.
I'm sure there's going to be one tomorrow too.
I'm not trying to be flippant, but I mean, have you been to Philly?
Yeah.
There's some rough parts.
No, there's 5 people, non-life-threatening injuries. No arrests have been made yet.
Well, you know what happened yesterday in Wayne, Michigan. There was an unarmed bank robbery a block from my work. So I guess that just means that we're more civilized here. You don't even have to flash a gun. We'll just give you our money. So
to wrap up the trifecta, then the Philadelphia shooting that we've been talking about feels safe in saying this doesn't really relate to gun control at all. This relates to gun control as a drunk driver relates to automobile restrictions, where nobody's going to go, drunk drivers, this shit happens, they kill people, they kill innocent people themselves sometimes, and it's a tragedy, and it ruins people's lives, certainly. But nobody's going, well, this is why we shouldn't have so many cars on the road.
As far as I know, well, the last report I did hear earlier today was the mayor of Philadelphia is calling for the president and Congress to enact stricter gun control laws. Now, I don't know how that fits into the shooting. Besides, I'm going to go ahead and go out on a limb and say he's probably a Democrat, so he's probably just parroting the party line.
Exactly.
So I don't know how that really fits in with what happened. So
to go back a little bit to the idea that, if you believe that all of these problems are solved with stricter gun control, then yeah, you should. That narrative advances your cause. The idea of classifying any incident that involves 3 people getting shot or more being, classified as a mass shooting, that helps your narrative, that helps your cause. And if you truly believe that that's the answer, then that's a noble cause. Those people aren't doing anything evil. They're not doing anything out of hate. They honestly believe, in the same way that people who are anti-abortion believe that is an independent life in the womb and not just a cluster of cells. You might not agree with them and you might not agree with their actions, but they are still performing those actions out of nobility, out of what they believe is right. But I don't believe that they're right.
Yeah, would that have stopped yesterday? No.
Right. So we've agreed that it probably wouldn't have stopped El Paso. It may have done something about Dayton, but not in a way that I think would involve drastically overhauling gun control in this country. And it would have done nothing to stop Philadelphia from happening.
Yeah, the only thing I can say about Dayton is his friend, if he ends up doing a couple of years in prison for forging federal documents, dude, you're a dumbass. Who in the fuck agrees to forge a federal document for your friend? I mean, if the shooter had bought him and said, "Look, my family, you know how they are. They're terrified of anything sharper than a butter knife." Okay, yeah, you can keep him at my place. That's one thing. To forge a federal document and go, well, he seemed trustworthy all the years I've known him.
Actually, that's not what he's being charged for. He's being charged.
That's what NPR reported.
I'm reading from NBC News. He's being falsely identifying that he was a drug user and buying a handgun for himself, and then possession of a firearm while unlawfully using drugs. Those are the 2 charges he's being prosecuted for.
So NPR was right when they said he's not being charged in connection with the shooting as a co-conspirator.
Correct.
But what he was being charged for, they reported wrong. Well, wait a minute. If he did lie about not being a drug user, that is falsifying a federal document.
Yes. Yeah, you're lying on that document. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like your enlistment papers.
Right.
That's why they tell you, once they lock you into a story at the recruiter station, you don't change your story no matter what they tell you.
It sounds like NPR was reporting probably with the actual crime on paper, and NBC is putting it in context so their audience can have a better understanding of it, I think.
Which helps, because I automatically assumed that he just forging the documents was buying the weapon under false pretenses for somebody else. But either way, I mean, it's still a federal crime, so good luck, buddy.
If gun control isn't the answer to stopping any of these incidents, and maybe mental health is. But even then, all anyone wants to talk about in relation to mental health is, well, then we stop the people who are mentally ill from getting guns. It seems simple enough, right? Only it's not. I think you have to talk about bigger societal issues.
Well, I mean, the problem is when the talking points have been co-opted for political ideology, and you can't bring them up without being labeled as, oh, you're trying to push your political viewpoints. And it's like, no, I'm not. I'm saying this is apolitical as possible. And you people are politicizing it because of your prejudices towards this argument. I can't help you with that. Only you can help you with that, and you don't want any help with that because you've already made up your mind. I mean, that's the danger in this situation. That's one of the things I agree. That's one of the things I agree with. Another podcast I listen to is all this talking Has anybody changed their mind who are hardcore for or against gun control? And it really is the people who aren't really, like, I guess, the wishy-washy centrist fence sitters who are more likely to be swayed by a logical argument and the facts of the situation versus the people who've already made up their mind and they say the dreaded words, "You'll never change my mind." I'm sorry. I finished what you were saying.
No, you're fine. No, I don't know.
What's really interesting is when you look at other countries who do have. Well, I don't think there's any country, democratic country, that's set up along the lines that we are that has as much freedom as far as guns go. But if you look at other countries who have a fair amount of firearms, they don't have this violence. Even if their laws are just a tiny bit more strict than ours, they still don't have this amount of violence with it. And to me, it's like, is it just, are we being conditioned to be this angry? Are we being set up to constantly? We always have to have an enemy. We always have to. It's got to be us versus them. And so, once we get into that mentality, you can dehumanize the other people to the point where, yeah, if you are prone to psychosis and you do have a psychotic break, you're going to take it out on the people that you've been hearing are evil and bad and are trying to hold you down, and take shit away from you, and deny you your rights.
I'll ask this question. I know this is a Republican talking point here, but fuck it. Do you think all these other countries' populations are as medicated as ours?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
I really don't.
This is great because that's why there's no answer to this question, because we are not even prepared to have the real conversations about why these incidents happen. Why do these people find themselves in this situation where they feel like that is the answer? Because we can't even handle these conversations on the most basics of levels of the everyday crime that happens that isn't reported on. We still talk about fighting crime. You don't fight crime. You know how you eradicate crime? You make sure that more people have opportunities. That's it. You can take down criminals.
Okay, well, let me take a shot. Let me take a shot.
Some statistics that prove me wrong, then, because I don't know what they would look like.
Well, let me take a shot at this, Aaron, because
but in places where you have more opportunities for economic growth, you have less crime.
I just think there's always going to be bad people, regardless of opportunity.
Yeah,
and they all happen to live in the cities.
No, I'm not. You're saying that. I'm not saying that.
Well, but to say that. We can agree that there are always going to be bad people, but just like if we were going to have a conversation about gun control, we can't include the guy who is a drug dealer and purchases his weapons illegally, because that's not a controllable variable. That's not what we're talking about. We understand that there's always going to be bad things that happen.
Okay, white collar crime. That's people with plenty of opportunity.
But it isn't the point to try to reduce the situations that cause people to commit crimes out of desperation. You're never going to solve violence. You're never going to solve hate. That is hardwired into us as a species. Give us enough people, we'll start to ostracize a certain group of that one big group. That's just human nature.
Yeah, I wasn't saying that, there's a place in the U.S. where there's all the wealthiest people with the most opportunities and there's zero crime. I'm saying if you want to talk about statistics, places where you have opportunities for economic growth, for actually obtaining anything in this country, you have less people turning to crime as an alternative.
I mean, I'll agree with that, but I don't think it's a fix-all. I don't think it's a cure-all. I think there's many things that contribute.
How is my statement even a cure-all? It doesn't even have a plan behind it. I'm not saying, go Andrew Yang's route and give everyone $1,000 and crime just disappears.
If you gave 100 people $1,000, at least one of them is going to be plotting how to get the other person next to them's $1,000.
This is something that I would state as a fact, and if I could bet on it, I would throw every piddly dime I could at it. If a plan like that was actually implemented in the U.S. properly, crime would go down. Guaranteed, crime would go down.
Well, we'll agree to disagree on that one. I'm with Rich. It would just turn into someone's going to plot to take your $1,000. You haven't even
disagreed with me.
What's that?
Crime would go down. That's not an argument, Chris. You're saying that crime would happen. I'm not, and that's not what I'm not saying that crime would be eradicated by giving everyone $1,000. I'm saying crime would go down. Pointing out that a crime would still happen under those circumstances is meaningless. If crime still goes down, that's progress.
And my point
crime will still happen.
My point is that, and I guess I didn't explain it well enough, if you give people who are living comfortably, who don't quote unquote need that $1,000 to survive, you give 100 of them $1,000. Well, there's always going to be one person who's going to be trying to plot, just because that's how they're wired. You know, whether it be greed or they're a sociopath and are trying to get over on somebody. But if you give 100 desperate people who are scratching to survive that $1,000, yeah, more than that, yeah, desperate people are going to be driven to do desperate shit a lot more than people that are comfortable. Okay, my point wasn't that crime's still going to happen, just like you said, Aaron, because it's going to. My point is it's less likely to happen. You can't get rid of the problem. And I mean, anyone who starts off going, our solution is to end crime, well, your solution might as well be to divide by zero, because you're just wasting your time, dude.
Same platitude. We're going to eradicate terrorism.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah, we're going to end hate.
Until what? Until what? The field mouse is no longer terrified by the hawk?
Did you just read The Secrets of NIMH? Sorry, my bad. Bad joke. The projection booth did a episode on that.
It's the same people that tell you they want to end hate. Good luck with that.
Well, you can end. Well, I guess
look,
if you want to.
Here's my beef, though. Can we put a pin in this? Because my statement is that more economic opportunities for people will lower crime. And you disagree, right? Do we at least have that correct? That you're disagreeing with that statement?
Yes. Because I think there's always going to be bad people out there, no matter what.
Chris, I did not say that it would eradicate crime. I would say that it would lower crime. So if you're disagreeing, are you saying that crime will stay the same?
Sounds like we're having the nature versus nurture argument, actually.
No.
Why are you talking to me like I'm 5, dude? I can understand what you're saying.
All right, then we'll just end it there, I guess, because
I already agreed to disagree a while ago, man.
I'm not trying to be condescending, but I keep repeating the question and getting the same answer back from you, which doesn't apply to the question that's being asked.
Or it's not the answer
like
you
saying
want.
That. Let's say there's not an answer that I want. Let's say my question is. There's a procedure that could lessen cancer deaths in this country. And your answer was, well, people will still die of cancer. So how does that help?
Okay. Again, I already agreed to disagree with this, dude. You have your opinion, I have mine. Giving people opportunity doesn't change the fact that some people are just not wired good. I don't think there would be as dramatic as a decrease as you think there would be.
All I said was lessen, right? Isn't that all we can do?
True. I don't know what you want me to say, dude.
If you have a reason for why it wouldn't lessen crime by giving people more economic opportunities, I'd like to hear it. If you're going to tell me that crime will still happen, I'm saying that's not a valid argument.
Okay, let's move on then. You've stated that 10 times. This is an issue we're not going to see eye to eye on, and I'm okay with that.
All right.
So can we move on to something? We've had a pretty heavy couple hours here.
I think we're done.
All right.
Well, I absolutely nothing about anything we've talked about. Just a very short little thing I saw. I'm not even sure if it's factual. The website Fortress of Nerditude is reporting that Ewan McGregor has agreed to reprise his role as Obi-Wan Kenobi on Disney Plus's Kenobi television show. If that's a true statement, My inner nerd just filled the cup.
Made room in your pants.
Yeah. He was the best part of the prequels.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's no matter how you feel about the new movies, how you feel about the original trilogy, and the prequels. I think that's almost universally accepted that it's like he was the high water mark of those movies. So somehow they had Boba Fett's dad, Samuel L. Jackson with a purple lightsaber, Yoda fighting with a lightsaber, and Ewan McGregor still out showing all of them. So, yeah.
Watch his contract is going to be like, I insist that Jar Jar is in the series with me.
Ugh.
It'll be like a buddy cop movie.
Well, in that case, Chris, will you buy a gun in my name so I can blow my own head off? Because I'm not going to. If they do psychological tech, why do you want a gun? Kill myself. Jar Jar is in a new Obi-Wan show. I can't handle this shit.
What if you just going to die as Jar Jar Binks?
Maybe
would that be a valid reason? If Jar Jar Binks,
if the Shrink's a Star Wars fan, he might be like, "Can I stand behind you when you pull the trigger?" I mean, he get a 45, make sure it passes through cleanly into me. He might be on board with it. So, oh God, yeah. Like I said, I don't know if that's a legit. It's just a blurb they posted, and I literally saw it while scrolling looking for some other shit, and was like, oh boy. Like I said, my inner geek, my inner Star Wars geek's dick got hard. So
now there's a thing that you're saying he signed, because I'm seeing something from Deadline that says he is in talks. It may happen.
Okay, hold on here. Double check. Okay. According to this is Variety.com, is reported by Fortress of Nerditude. Ewan McGregor to return as Obi-Wan Kenobi in Disney Plus series. Ewan McGregor is returning as Jedi Master Obi-Wan Kenobi in a series for Disney Plus. And then they have a Star Wars Kenobi with the two Tatooine sons. Like that's apparently the logo of the show, which I didn't even know that they were even looking to do a Kenobi show. So, yeah, I mean, yeah. If that's like I said, if that's a factual quote, and this screenshot isn't doctored with Adobe Cellophone or whatever the fuck, then yeah,
it's not deep faked.
Not deep faked, yes. Even though, at this point, if they deep faked him onto another actor, as long as they got a voice that was close to his, I've jerked off some deep fake. I got a Scarlett Johansson one, and I swear to God, it looks just like her. And let me tell you something, she don't look bad with a dick in her mouth. But that's just my opinion. But and as far as moving away from the serious tone of the show, that's all I got. So,
hey. It was a palate cleanser. Worked for me. So I guess this is the part where I tell you that we are on Twitter at unregimentedpod. Email us, unregimented@customermedia.net. If you want to donate, there is a PayPal button at the bottom. Click on the Amazon banner. You check us out Saturdays. Well, I almost said Amazon. Not yet. Give us time. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spreaker.com, ChristopherMedia.net. I'm sure I missed somebody, but at this point, if you're hearing us, you found out where to get it. So I just thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next week.
See ya.
Later, guys.
Unregimented. ChristopherMedia.net. ChristopherMedia.net. If you like this show, please tell a friend. Please make sure to rate and comment on all your favorite Christopher Media shows. Please follow us on Twitter and like and share us on Facebook. You can subscribe to all ChristopherMedia.net shows for free on ChristopherMedia.net. Thank you for listening, and thank you for visiting ChristopherMedia.net. Thank you for visiting ChristopherMedia.net.